Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Daniel, good to be here, man. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time and being on the podcast. This is something that I've been looking forward since we got in touch. And your life is fascinating. You have a podcast, you're an author, you're a coach, and you have done all of this so far in your life. Very accomplished human being. But when I was reading about your story, a lot of the time, or it took you a long time to start because fear was holding you back. And we know fears hold us back, right? We are afraid of the unknown,
Mm.
things that we cannot control. And when you experience that, it is debilitating. It's very hard to overcome that. And we tend to get frustrated at ourselves. How do you overcome this? What was the process that you had to go through to finally take control of your life?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out that answer, of how to fully. But I will say, I feel like, and again, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. And congrats to you, by the way. Like, most folks don't make it past a couple episodes. So I think, as we're recording this, you're 25 in. So kudos to you for getting started and kind of progressing forward, man. So that's awesome.
Appreciate
And
it, man.
it's kind of part of my story is like, for the longest time, I didn't believe that I was the person to lead. I didn't believe that I was good enough. I was all, and partly we can go back to childhood. I was probably growing up as a middle child and always like yearning for attention and not feeling like I was liked a lot and, being very lonely. And I think, that always made me seek attention and be a people pleaser and all this type of stuff. And that led me as I was into adulthood of being fearful of just making decisions and doing things. And what that led to was not that I was in a bad position, but I probably, the career that I went into more because I was just for context, I was a PJ professional was my first career. I taught golf and which I love teaching golf, which is kind of a thread of coaching and doing the sales mentorship stuff now, which is kind of interesting is I enjoy teaching and coaching people. The golf stuff was a nice kind of lead into that but it wasn't really the thing I wanted to build a life around, but I didn't know anything better. So as an example, that's like, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college. And I bet a lot of people listening in probably the same way. I had no idea what they wanted
Yeah,
to do. So yeah,
I'm one of those. Yes.
I got a business degree and then I kind of, sputtered out into like, all right, I'm in adulthood. I got to start making some money. And then I went from there. All that to say there was really a few catalyst moments but I can't say for certain, like, oh, this moment was the change. It was a series of small microscopic decisions over a long period of time. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, give me the silver bullet, give me the quick fix, give me the thing that's going to make me change. But for me, it was a variety of things. Like, I'll give you an example. Back in like 2000, it was basically turn of 2009 and I was in a lot of debt, call it $40,000, $50,000 debt at the time. And I was only making, $30,000 a year. So you could do the math. Like I was living, rice and beans type thing. But my brother gifted me the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And it was the first time in my life that I really had a eyes wide open view of like finances and budgeting and like, how to start controlling because before I would like run up credit card debt. I didn't know how to, really save money or to invest money or anything like that. But I shared that one story and there's 30 of those of that one moment. That wasn't the complete change because I had to do 10 other things, but that was one of those small catalyst moments of like, okay, I can take control of this. I can actually, sell stuff and maybe live a little bit closer to the vest in terms of the dollars I have and not splurge. It might be harder now, but that's going to lead to maybe a greater future for me. So those type of small microscopic decisions all of a sudden led to me to where I am today, which is a totally different position than 15 years ago. But it didn't happen overnight. It was small changes, and we can go into that a little bit deeper. So I'll pause there. I know I jumped around a little, but hopefully that's a little bit helpful of like, the context and the background of where I was 10, 15 years ago. And we can talk about how I got to today.
No, actually, it is. When you think about it, right? As you mentioned, a lot of people, including myself, we don't know what to do at 18, 20, 22. we have no clue. Some people have the blessing of knowing exactly what they want to do for a living, what they want to be a doctor, they want to be an entrepreneur, an engineer. What surprises me about your story, which I figured there was something like that, that he had incremental steps, right? It's like, okay, I'm you probably never saw yourself 15 years ago as a podcaster. You never saw yourself probably as an author of children's book either. That happened over time. But those things start giving you confidence slowly but surely, on and on. The thing is, when you were faced with life decisions from a point of view that something inside of you was telling you, you need, for instance, in this case, podcast that you started 6 years ago, you need to start doing a podcast. And things new to us, as I mentioned, are terrifying. We don't know exactly what we're doing. We are afraid of being judged. And we suck at the very beginning. What was the How was the time when you felt this is what I'm supposed to do, and no matter how much fear I might feel, I'm still going to do it?
Hmm. Well, I think it's a good note because it seems it's a great story, right? Hey, Just Get Started podcast began in fall of 2017. I've been doing it, again, 400 plus episodes. I've interviewed hundreds of people. It's been awesome. But the real story is how I got there, and the reason it's called Just Get Started, because for 2 years prior, I didn't start a podcast. So I'll tell that story quickly because I think it's really relevant and I bet would resonate with a lot of folks listening in. In 2015, I was selling software to marketing departments at the time, and I got in with a lot of sports creative departments, like at the Major League Baseball and these other NFL and etc. And then they had a big sports conference, so I came there and I was part of a small group to join. And I met this one guy, Adam Martin, and he had the Makers of Sport podcast, and really cool dude. And we got started talking. I said, man, yeah, I've thought about, I like podcasts. I thought about doing a podcast. And I said, I'm going to start one this year, and I'll send you a note, let you know when I start it. Well, I saw him back at the same conference a year later. And of course, I hadn't started one yet. And this is summer of 2016. And you could maybe, know where I'm going with this. I said, no, this is the year. I'm going to start it this year. Like, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm excited about it, blah, blah, blah. I saw him at the same damn conference the following summer. Now we're in, July of 2017. And by that point, though, this goes back to, and I'll kind of land the plane and chat about something I think could be actionable for folks, is I wouldn't have started the podcast if I didn't go through, I think, those 2 years of where there was shame, there was like self-doubt, there was fear, there was all of these things of indecision, right? Am I good enough? And it ultimately led me to, when the Just Get Started came about, I was battling with myself. And by the way, I had been battling for many years with like wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to start a business, but not having the guts really to do it. And I still remember, I don't remember the exact day, but I remember it was like late summer of 2017. I was like, dude, you just got to get started. Like, just do it. And I said, just get started. I was like, that should be the podcast. I should talk with people that have gotten started. And not only is it a crash course for me to get started, all right, so it's helpful. Now I can actually do the podcast and put a show out. And here's a slight little sidebar. Back when I was in high school, I had a teacher, Mr. Hines, public speaking class, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, Brian, you have great pitch and tone. You should be on radio someday. Now, this is back in 2001, right? Podcasting wasn't around, but I never forgot that. I would have people come up to me. I remember one time, like I was in an airport, bar and talking to some folks, and they're like, wow, you got a really great voice. Are you on radio and stuff? It happened all the time. I don't know if I have a good voice or not, but people have said that. All that to say, the intersect of, okay, I love listening to podcasts. I want to start a podcast. Oh, you have a great voice. I really loved interviewing people. And, I like watching Regis and Kathy Lee and Oprah growing up with my grandmother and stuff like that. Why am I telling you all this? is because all of that intersect to be like podcasting seemed like a cool avenue. And it was around all the things I really enjoyed, right? It was interviewing people, it was learning, it was being curious. And calling it Just Get Started really became this catalyst to help propel other people to get started. Because now I felt, hey, you know what? You overcame all this stuff the last few years and you got started. What about those people just behind you? They feel stuck. They feel fearful. They were you in 2015. How can you help them get started? And that's how Just Get Started was born. So I say all that to say it's been such a fun ride the last, almost 7 years now. But it was because of the heartache. It was because of the struggle I went through for a couple of years prior that ultimately led to starting the podcast in fall of 2017. So
That's a fascinating story, dude. And you do have a great voice. I can tell you. I listened to a couple of your episodes, and it's like, yeah, this was either made for the radio or podcasting for sure. And I just wonder, listen to your story, and I think that you mentioned that it's like that you had to go through those 2 painful years of feeling frustrated with yourself, feeling like I know deep inside, I know that I should be doing this because that's something that I want to do at this point in my life, but I don't have the courage to do it until your body or your mind said, you know what, enough is enough. Let us just get us, which is still props to you because I know a lot of people that never get to that point of enough is enough. In my case, I had many, many different ideas in the past of how to start a business, doing different things in my life. And I would always do like more research, more research. I need more information. I need to watch more videos. I need to read more books. And nothing is harder, as you know, than taking the first step. Nothing. It just feels extremely overwhelming. Not only that, but once you take it, you know, it's game on. If you fail now, it's because you didn't put enough effort. But if you never started, well, I guess we'll never know.
right.
How can people put themselves in the best position to take that first step? How can they make it as easy as it could be?
Well, I think the first question to really ask, and because you said something there that's really important. And by the way, I didn't know this years ago. And as I said, I'm still kind of figuring all this out. But I feel like I'm in a better frame of mind over the last few years than I was prior. And that is, what do you really want? Because there's a lot of people out there that, they might say, oh, you know what? I see, you know, whatever. I see Mr. Beast having, he has massive, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. Why do you want to be a YouTuber? Do you want it because Mr. Beast has millions of views and it looks cool or whatever? Or do you actually enjoy creating content? And are you a creative in that sense? I think everyone's creative, but are you creative in that sense, right? It's the same thing. Like, do you want to start? Like, I've made this decision because if we talked 6, 7 years ago, I wanted to start a big software business. I wanted to start a big software company, and and I had a few different ideas of what I would want to do there. And now I want the complete opposite. I want to be a solopreneur. I don't want to have any employees. I want to set my schedule as is. I want to make enough money so that I could support my family, so I could do some good in the world. It gives me some opportunities, but I don't need to be a billionaire. And because when I wanted to start the software business, that was the Brian that was, remember I told you when I was a kid, that was the one that was always seeking attention, being the people pleaser. That's what I thought other people wanted. It was cool to, create the next Instagram. That was cool to talk about. But once I actually sat with myself and realized, no, here's what I really want, really truthfully want. I want autonomy. I want flexibility, right? Because if I start a big business, I'm answering to investors, I have employees, there's all these things that come with it, right? I don't want any of that crap. So once I really sat and figured out what I want and truly to my heart, my core, what I want, not what anyone else wants, that's when I was able to actually move forward in a better direction. So what would my encouragement be to folks is, sure, you could start. And by the way, let me say this before I go into the tangent. When you're starting, decide if you're just trying things or you're actually like, if you want to start to learn the guitar, okay, you don't have to turn that into a business or be, whatever, the next star. Like, just go, strum the guitar. There's nothing wrong with that. Like start something, like if you, even something like a hobby like that. But if you're thinking like, hey, I have a big project, something I really want to do, I would first think of, do I really want to do this? Is this a focus of mine? And by the way, that could be a business. That could be, am I out of shape and I want to get the healthiest I've ever been? It could be a variety of different stuff. Do I want to spend more time with my kids because I've been really focused on work? It could be a lot of different things. What do you really want? Simple, but hard, right? It's simple, but it's hard to actually have that inner dialogue. And then once we really figure it out, then it's taking the step forward. To your point, it's really just action. I don't know what that step is because everyone's answer is going to be different, but it's taking that action forward, that the smallest, simplest, microscopic step. And we could riff on what that could be. If it's let's use podcasting, right? If it's a podcast, call up one of your friends and interview them, right? Say, I'm going to load one episode up next week. Okay, well, what do I have to do to get an episode on Apple? They're going to make me load artwork. It's okay. I have to have one quick image up there, right? They're going to make me load an audio file. Okay, what are the 2 or 3 things I need? And then let me start the podcast. I don't need 20 episodes. I don't need this big production. I don't need any of that. So I think it's the simplest step forward is how you take action. To your point earlier, you don't have to do a ton of research. Start, and then we can tweak from there. So I'll pause there because I can get really, I get passionate about this stuff. But
I love it, man. And you said there's so much in there that one of the things that I can pull from what you said is knowing what we want. And it is hard because we tend to get confused what we think we want. As you said, we see people like Mr. Beast making millions and millions and millions a year and just having this amazing life outside looking in, even though when you read about his life, it's like, okay, that guy's obsessed and he doesn't rest at all. But we see people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, and we think that's the life we want, but do we actually want to do the thing that they are doing? So that is very, very key what you're saying. It's like you do need to know what you want. It might not be fancy. It might not be, as you said, it might be just playing the guitar and teaching at high school. Who knows? And it's interesting because for many, many years, I didn't know what I wanted. I just didn't. I never had this passion. I never had this direction. And it's so hard to live life and find a purpose or trying to be successful at something when you don't have direction. So yes, it's just, and you coming to a decision, a that, you know what, I don't need to have the status of being a founder, of being a CEO of a multi-billion company. I don't. I just, once you start experiencing that freedom, that flexibility, you get addicted to it. It's like, that's how I want to do. I want to spend the rest of my life with. I want to enjoy time with my wife, with my son, and and doing things that I love. However, it's never easy. Entrepreneurship is hard. How have, what is your process when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel that fear crippling in, that either you're not doing enough or you might not be able to make it? How you overcome that daily or weekly mental battle?
well, it's funny you asked that because this has actually come up in some conversations very recently around because I've been trying to, I call it my slow summer. I've been trying to really slow down the last month and a half, and I'm going to for this summer because I'm one of those like, and I, just for some context, I'm a single dad, so I have my son every other week. So like the weeks I don't have him, I can go hard into like, like, oh, I'm going to do 8 hours of, whatever work. I'm going to update my website. I'm going to do this podcast stuff. I'm going to write. I'm going to, whatever. I can find stuff to do. And then the weeks I have him, I try to really focus on my son. He's my number one priority. But I'd say that to say like everyone's story is different. Everyone's situation is different. So one is, okay, so let me answer it in kind of 2 thoughts. So one is Are you really busy, or are you filling your day with a lot of shit? Like, is it just bull crap that you're actually doing? So is it meaningful work that's getting you to where you want to go? That's the first question to ask yourself. Because a lot of times it's procrastination. You're wasting time. And it feels like, man, I'm overwhelmed. I got a lot of stuff going on. Well, you can get rid of 50% of it. Now, are you willing to get rid of it because you feel like it's like, oh man, I got to make that extra post online, or I got to do this? Is it really relevant? It might not be moving the needle at all. So that's kind of one side of the coin. The other side is, I think, going back to what you asked, being comfortable with what you want. And for me, like I said, for me, it's like, I want to spend more time with my son this summer. You know, my girlfriend, I want to spend time with. I want to travel a little bit more. So what does that mean? Well, that means that I can't do as much work. So I have two options. It's very simple. I could be stressed and have anxiety, like, oh my God, my computer's not open. Or I can say, you know what? This is what I've been driving for in life, where I'm in a position financially to be able to do this stuff, where I'm in a position with loved ones and friends and family to be able to do this stuff. This is what I've been driving for. So let's take a moment and relax and enjoy that time. I'm a big believer, and I didn't really have this synthesized until probably last year. It's relationships and experiences. Those are the two like check boxes. Great relationships, great experiences, and a lot of times when they overlap, that's when you have your best memories in life. So that's how I make a lot of decisions nowadays. Is it who's going to be here? Like, oh, Brian, would you want to come out and do something? Okay, who's going to be there? Well, if there's people that I really want to be around, in the past, by the way, like 2, 3 years ago, I'd be like, well, I'm going to work on a Friday night. I got stuff I got to get done. And yes, those times are important, by the way. Sure. Right. I'm not negating that. Like, that might be important. But now I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to go hang out. I want to go spend time with people that are really important to me. Or, hey, I want to do this experience that I would have said no to. So I think partly it's like we're overwhelmed because we make ourselves overwhelmed with useless things. So first step is, who do I actually want to be around? What do I actually want to do? And then being okay with doing those things, because now you have the capability to do those. And pushing your work away for one day or 1 week, you have to, this goes back to like sitting and being aware. Like, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to bankrupt you, or it's not going to put you way behind. So you have to really be comfortable going back to I want to make this decision because I think it's the best for me right now. And I'm going to make that decision. I don't care what other people think. I don't care what people are doing on social media. What do I want? And I want to spend time with these people and do these experiences and have these joys in life that I've worked really hard to set myself up so I can actually do those things. That's how I think about overwhelm. But it is a battle. I'm not going to say like every day, because I still battle it, but I always go back to, I catch myself. I say, Brian, what do you really want to do? Well, I want to enjoy life. I want to have happy moments. I want to create memories. Well, then I need to do these other things. And I can't just sit at the computer doing what seems like nonsense work right now. That can come another time. That's not important today. And that's how I think about it.
Yeah, that one hit home. I'm somebody who, I'm not gonna say that I'm addicted to work, but it's hard for me to take a day off. I feel I stress out when I'm not doing, uh, and everything's a choice. But I get stressed out when I feel that I'm not doing anything productive, whether researching, editing, reaching out to people, reading, anything. It's just like I've been in the last month or so. I've been getting close to burnout, but because I haven't taken a day off like in 3 months, and I've talked to some friends like, just take the week off. I was like, dude, having one day off drives me crazy. So if I guess you slowly have to consciously and intentionally make that choice of, let me pump the brakes. Nothing's going to happen. And I
What are you
guess
missing out, Dan? What are you missing out on if you don't work tomorrow? Let's say tomorrow you turn your phone off, you shut down your computer, you're out in nature all day, and you don't work. What's going to happen?
I'll be honest with you here. I'll be straight up with you. When I started, so when I started the podcast, I knew that I needed to make some sacrifices, right? from a financial standpoint, because I knew I'm just having like freelancing side gigs. Because if I knew that if I had like a full time job and the podcast, I would have quit the podcast a while back, because it have taken me a lot of my time initially while I'm trying to figure everything out. So, having said that, when I started the podcast, I knew that my goal was to have a career as a podcaster and make a living and being able to, like you, having this sort of like business where I don't rely on other people. I don't have employees. I don't have anything, and I can just create my own schedule, create my own flexible uh, time. Now, I knew that the chances, the possibilities or the odds were against me when it comes to what are the chances of the podcast being successful, because it's an overcrowded market, all of that. For some reason, I feel minutes, hours, or days that I'm not spending working on the podcast, those odds get even smaller and smaller. I know and I'm very aware it's a story I've told myself to keep pushing to give myself a shot at being able to make this to make a career out of this. So yes, it's not that I think that everything is just going to go to shit, but I do feel, am I working hard enough that I don't know.
Well, that's a good analysis, I guess, of your situation. I think partly though, it's nothing's going to happen, by the way, if you take off tomorrow. And then that comes down to, well, one of the first questions is like I always like to take folks, like look at your week. How do you prioritize your week? Okay. What's your calendar look like? And I bet if you're really honest with yourself, there's a handful of moments throughout the day that you could probably say, "God, you know what? There's an hour, quote unquote, wasted there. 3 hours here. I decided to do this. I probably, not a great decision." And you could start picking through those where I bet you can get your work done in a third of the time or half the time if you really had focused, intentional work. And I don't know if you know Nir Eyal, Nireal, Eyal, and
Indestructible.
what's that? Indistracted. Yeah, yeah, great dude, and he'd be a good guest for your podcast. And to talk around these things, like if you start figuring out how to set up your schedule, you start finding a lot of time. And going back to what I said earlier, is how do you push away the wasted stuff, the extra stuff is that moving the needle? And a lot of that's reassessment with your business or with the podcast. Like, is that post, are these type of things moving the needle, or it just takes time? I got to be consistent. If I don't do this for 100 days in a row, then I'm not going to get the results. Okay, that's fair. That's the conversation to have. However, I will say this, I've never got close to burnout. And the reason I've never got close to burnout is, one, I really enjoy what I do with all these different things, with all these endeavors. And by the way, just full disclosure, like I'm still working a full-time sales job. I haven't transitioned out of that yet. And I do the podcast and I do, coaching on the side. I do all these stuff. I spend time, and I say that not as like a grandiose, like patting on the back, but is I got really intentional many years ago about how I structure my schedule so that I could do the things I want to do. And almost anything I don't want to, I push off the table. And if it comes up a week down the road or a month down the road, great, I'll address it then. But most of the time it goes away. So that would be and this is probably advice for anyone, is like, look at a general week or maybe over a 2-week schedule and say, where can I weed out the crap and find some time for myself? Because when you're getting close to burnout, my thought, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, is that you start actually doing less quality work. So stepping away for a day and actually building up that, like for me, like when I take a couple days off, like if I'm going on vacation, if I can't be, doing stuff with, what all the different endeavors, right? I get more energized going back to it. So that's something maybe to consider. And you might do like a test run. What if I take a day off? I literally put my phone away. I go out in nature. I walk, I play a sport, I do something. I can't do anything. I'm doing zero work today. Well, guess what? Tomorrow you're going to come back and be like just fully amped up, I bet. Might be something to consider. That's all.
Most likely. I think my feeling of burnout came not that I was getting tired, because the definition of my definition of burnout, and I know that people have different definitions, but mine was I was losing the emotional and mentally energy to keep doing what I was doing at the pace I was doing it. Now, as you said, we waste a lot of time. And if we really pay attention to what we do, then we realize, oh, I waste like an hour here, half an hour there, 3 hours here. And then truly, the work we do is like 4 hours in a day, maybe five, if we are very efficient. But yes, and it's true. Your your output, your product, the things you're putting out there lose quality because you don't have the mental energy or even the physical energy just to keep doing at the same pace. Now, I just need to reread like a very good book I read years ago called Newport Deep Work. That one is just how to really be intentional, how to focus on your work. And when it comes to free time, yeah, I guess my life is just been doing the podcast, doing the like side hustle, freelancing stuff, and then running and going to the gym like 7 days a week. And yeah, I mean, it gets exhausting. Absolutely. I'll probably pay it. I'll look it up. I'll see where I'm wasting my time, and I've started testing having like a day off, or at least a full afternoon. But
Well,
yes,
and
it's
by the way, Dana, you need to
mhm,
do. I think as I don't. How old are you?
32.
Okay. Those are things like I think you need to do because it's something again, I look at this as 41, I guess maybe
Mhm.
it's, I've been on this earth for a while. You kind of start figuring stuff out, what works, what doesn't. It's like being around people gives you energy. Having good friends you can lean on, do like you mentioned running. Do you run by yourself? Do you have a running group or
I run with a group like once a week, and the other 5 days I just run by myself.
okay. So like having a run club, like that's great. Like being able to be around folks. Again, I think it gives us energy. It's more people maybe that are in our ecosphere of like, okay, this is okay. They're doing cool things. All right, we're working together. But I think you have to get away from work because otherwise we're just all we just think this is the world. And that's not the world. And so yeah, I would encourage you to like, by the way, we don't always have to be working. I live by this for so long of like, I gotta work, I gotta work, I gotta work. And then I realized like, no, that's not what life's about. I want to enjoy my time. So let me focus when I am working. And by the way, I procrastinate like anyone else and I pop off on stuff and I'm doing things I shouldn't be. But as best I can, let me focus on the things that are most important. And then let me go spend time doing other things because those actually enrich my projects. That makes me a better writer or a better author or a better podcaster when I'm doing those things. So that would be my encouragement is yeah, figure out some of those. And that's maybe a good action item for folks listening in is like figure out your schedule and then what can you trim away? And don't just trim it away and then sit there staring at a wall. Put in exciting activities that you want to do in that extra time. Don't put more work in yet. Actually do some fun stuff with it.
One thing I would recommend people, because this happened to me about a year ago. I know it's kind of scary, but you need to go on your phone and see your screen use time and see how much time you spend per day on apps like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and so on. I, I about a year ago I realized I still don't know how this happened, but I had an average of 2 hours a day just wasted on looking things on social media. But it never felt like that because it was like 20 minutes here, half an hour there, 15 minutes here. And when I realized, I was like, wait a minute. I mean, no wonder why I don't have time for anything. I'm just spending, you know, 2 hours of my whatever 16 awaking hours doing something that is completely unproductive. Yeah, man, it's one of the things that deep inside we know, but we need that nice reminder. We need that reminder. You know what? It's okay to take a day off, and you have already been there. I guess that when you started when you started your podcast, and by the way, I don't even know how you juggle everything that you have in your life because you have written two. Well, now on
The third
October
third
you
one's coming out, yeah.
you have your third, children's book. You're a blogger, you have a sales job, you have a podcast, you coach, you have your, I mean, I understand that you have like every other week your son, but still it's a lot of, plus a girlfriend that requires time,
Mhm.
energy, and intention of just spending time with her. Man, how do you do it? I mean, how do you do it?
And I don't get to golf as much as I used to. And by the way, I still and fitness is a massive thing for me. So I still do CrossFit a handful of times a week. And I actually signed up for my first marathon. I'll be doing a marathon in November. So I actually start training. I'm
Awesome.
about
Go.
running, which I don't like running at all.
Which one?
That's a
Which one?
city of Oaks. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, the city of
Okay.
Oaks here in Raleigh. Anyway, so I got to start training for that actually in a couple of weeks. But I think a lot of I I've removed a lot. I used to watch, I'll tell you this. Like I'm a big San Francisco 49ers fan, and fortunately we've had a good team the last few years. But like I used to watch, and this is going back, I mean, this was as much as like 7 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I used to literally start when the NFL started on a Sunday at 1 o'clock, and I'd watch all the way through whatever 10:30, 11 p.m., like when the 8:30 game, ended. I'd watch all day. My entire Sunday was gone. And now I'll watch my 49ers. I don't have like the Sunday ticket. So I'll watch them if it's a primetime game. Every once in a while, I'll turn on like the Red Zone channel and watch a little bit if they're on there. But for the most part, I don't watch any other football. That's a one example of like, that was hard for me. But I realized, wow, I just freed up like 7 hours on a Sunday, which I didn't have before. Right. So those are the little things. So, and by the way, I'm not perfect at this and I misstep all the time. What was important though, which I didn't do many years ago, which I do now, is I don't beat myself up for it. If I want to go watch a movie on Netflix or something like tonight, let's say, okay, like, all right, I don't want to work tonight. I don't want to do that. Like, I'm going to go do that. No big deal. I think one of the challenges is when you start beating yourself up for taking time or taking breaks or not prioritizing something that you should. I think there's an opportunity to assess, you know what? I think I should have probably made a better decision there. Next time, though, I'm going to make a better decision. Okay, no hard feelings. And I think that was I used to beat myself up for like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. That was a stupid, now it's like, you know what? Sometimes I need a break. I want to do that. So going back to your original question, which I kind of pushed aside slightly to go to another tangent, but is I just make it work because I make it work. Like I do the things that I want to do, but I don't do the stuff that I used to waste time on. So I'm not on social media as much as I used to be. I used to talk about the screen time. I used to scroll Instagram for an hour or two a day. Now I don't do that. I actually, the thing that annoys me is I have to have Instagram on my phone to like post stuff because now I'm sure there's other ways around that, right? I'm sure there's tools out there and stuff I probably could use, but I had deleted it off my phone for a while, but I feel obligated with the podcast. Okay, I'm going to post some, this type, but I barely have posted recently. I typically live on LinkedIn and then on Twitter a little bit. So all that to say, everyone's schedule is different. Everyone's life's different. I think, looking at what someone else does sometimes is helpful, but I think just being introspective of what is my life, what are the challenges I have, and then what are the things I really want to do. So let me give you a perfect example because I have my son this week, and this is a great example. It's like I could easily work, right? But I choose to spend time with him. Like after this conversation, we're going. I have this summer schedule where I'm making him work out. So to get him, he's almost 12, to kind of get him fit and to understand the importance of that. And we're going to go on a little walk and we're going to do a little workout in the garage. That's something I prioritized, right? So I'm not going to do work. Now I could do work. I could let him play his video games and I could do my work in here. And sometimes we'll do that. But for tonight, this is what we've prioritized to do. That's what I would encourage other folks to look at. Like I think the kids is a great example because I think a lot of parents, and I was probably like this when he was younger, prioritize other stuff that's not as important over their kids, thinking I'll get another day tomorrow. We'll do it the next day. But the kids don't see that. The kids want time now. And that doesn't look good on you down the road if you keep neglecting the kids. So I would say if that's a thing like, God, I really need to spend more time with my kids, then block it out in your calendar. You schedule a meeting with your boss. You schedule a meeting when you're doing a coffee meetup for a business opportunity, schedule 2 hours with your son or schedule a date night with your wife. Like there's thing, if you're going to live and die by the calendar, then schedule your personal life too. But most people fail to do that. They schedule all this work stuff and then the personal life kind of makes sense when it does. So I've prioritized the things that I really want to prioritize. And then the other stuff gets in the way after if there's time. Just to kind of wrap up of the question you asked, how I get everything done. That's how I get it done because I've changed my priorities.
No, Brian, your level, honestly, your level of not only self awareness, but self management in a way that many people only see what you're seeing now when it's too late, when they're already old, when they look back and they say, I never spent time. Even if they didn't have kids, I didn't spend time with friends. I didn't spend time with my girlfriend or my wife. I didn't spend time with any, I just was focusing on work, work, work. And I feel that for many people, we hear that a lot of older people regretting and realizing that there were a lot of things that they were dismissing, that that was never a priority. But I do have the feeling for the majority of people, unless they experience that themselves, they believe that they're not going to experience that, and it's such a lie we tell to ourselves. And I can give you like a quick example. I think part of the reason, one of the reasons why I am the way that I am, always working. I grew up in a household. My dad was never around; he was always working. Now, I never held that against him. To me, that was normal. To me, that he I can see now he regrets not spending time with us at all, especially me being the oldest. But I told him, it's like, hey, you're good, at least for me, because I didn't have that resentment towards you because I felt that like completely normal now. But I'm making the same mistake. I might not have kids now, but I'm making the same mistake of working because now it comes like second nature. It comes like, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I give you big props, and that's one of the reasons why I love talking to people and doing this podcast. Like, stories like yours are eye opening, and they're a nice reminder that, I mean, we have a limited time on this earth, right? And you have even like a shorter time with your son when it comes to, well, he's only going to be 12 for so long, or only going to be until he's 18, and maybe he will just go to a different state or just a different country. Who knows, right? And knowing that you only have him like whatever 26 weeks in a year makes it every week even more precious. So once again, it just is very nice to hear, and somebody having not only the level of awareness but the intention of, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care what I feel like. Yes, as you said, I could be doing some work and he could be playing video games, and we're both going to be fine. My son is not going to regret playing video games, but I will regret not spending time with him.
Right. And one thing I really want to make sure, because you said that very eloquently, which was nice. One, if you want to work, you could work, right? Remember, this goes back to what do you want? Because what you want maybe is different than what I want. And goes back to all of our, at the beginning. If we really take control of our life, if we say, I'm taking control and I'm making decisions that are best for me, not for what it looks like because my parents want me to do this, or, my friends think this would be cool, or someone's doing this on Instagram. If I really want to do it. So for you, if you're like, I love doing work and I love doing this, I want to, again, I'm not telling anyone how to live their life. And for me, like I said, I think that's for me. I want to spend more time with my son when I have him. And again, I'm in a unique situation. So the weeks I don't have him, I go hard into work and I go hard into other things of like spending time with people. When he's with me, it's a little different scenario. Now, by the way, he plays a lot of hours of video games a week. He plays a lot. He's on summer break right now. He plays a lot of hours. One, because he loves to do it. So I don't want him to stop doing that. I think he loves to do it. He like, what's so cool is like he'll do video editing, and he'll like edit his own videos, put audio overlays, like really cool stuff. I'm like, man, that's awesome. Like, I'm proud of you, dude. But he likes doing that. So I'm not going to say like, oh, you got to spend 10 hours with dad. Dad has stuff I have to do too. I have work. I have things that are important as well. For me, we have to schedule and we have to prioritize some of that time when we have it. So I think that's what's important is you can't do all or nothing. You have to figure out how to schedule it out and what makes sense for you based on your schedule and your, thing. I work from home. Some people have to go into office. So it's a different scenario. Their kids might be in camp all day long. Well, I can take my son out to the tennis course at noon if I want because I work from home. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be sensitive to your situation and look at, again, what do I want to do? What are the things that I want to prioritize? And then how do I make decisions to go in that direction? You don't have to rip the Band-Aid off tomorrow. Slow and steady wins the race. Build up some consistency and start building some of these rituals into your life. And all of a sudden, that's how you become happier and more fulfilled. It doesn't happen tomorrow. It's by continual effort, day after day, week after week, month after month. And then you get to a point where I can honestly say, like I said earlier, is I don't mind taking off work. I'm with friends. I'm with my girlfriend. I'm with my son. I'm with, folks that I really enjoy and having these experiences because this is what I've worked so hard for because I built up for it. And I think that anyone has the opportunity to do that if they decide to take control back of their life.
That last point of this is why I'm working for. This is the reason why I'm spending the hours I'm spending. Not because, see, I think a lot of people lose that side. They don't. They feel that they need to accumulate and make more and make more and work more and do more and do more. But knowing exactly this is why I bust my ass working because of times like this that are going to be so limited. And I think that's absolutely not only beautiful, but it's something that, especially in the US, we're lacking. Just we are in that go hustle culture and mindset, and I'm one of them. I just stop for a second and realizing, man, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to grow in status? Am I doing this to have a nicer car? Or am I doing this to have the time and, as you mentioned earlier, have the experiences and the relationships that I want in my life? And if I can have them together, wonderful. When you said about living a happier and more fulfilled life, I think that we all want that, obviously. And but we have um, belief systems that we have created in our brain that either I'm not good enough or I'm this is not how the world works. We have our reality shaped by our perception and the stories we have told ourselves and our brain has created. And what I've seen talking to you, I realized that you have broken down a lot of those limiting beliefs and those stories that you used to live by. They used to be part of your identity. How do you become aware of them, and how do you change them?
Well, I think those are, two different, change happens. I think there's 2 points of change. There's people that want to change, and then there's people that commit to the change. Let's use a simple analogy. We see this a lot, New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go to the gym this year. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then, 3 weeks later, they stop going to the gym. They stop doing whatever because they had the rah, like, I'm going to do this, right? They see themselves crossing the finish line of the marathon, but they were unwilling to take the steps to actually train for it. Because running, if you ask anyone that's ran a marathon, and I'm going to learn this really the hard way this year, running the marathon is actually not difficult. It's the training for the marathon that's the most difficult. When you show up on marathon day, you better damn sure you're trained. Sure, it's going to be hard in that sense of like running 26 miles in a day, but the training is hard. You
It's
want to train
exhausting.
for 16 to 20. Have you done a marathon?
I ran my first one last December. It was
Awesome.
painful.
So you know this, right? You're training for, whatever, 4 months or so. And, anyways, I think that's the thing but if you commit to the change, hey, I'm going to show up and I'm going to run 3 times a week. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, when you get to marathon day, it's a lot easy. And it's the commit to the change that folks struggle with. It's anyone can say, I mean, think of people, we've done this to ourselves. Oh yeah, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to change. I'm going to do this, but we don't prioritize it. It doesn't come a commitment, and commitment is such an important part. So when you think about like, yeah, awareness is sitting down and being willing to be open, with being willing to be wrong, being willing to expose ourselves. There's a variety of ways, right? I can do that through meditation or journaling or reading. There's a lot of things. I can go to maybe therapy, right? There's a lot of things to expose that. But again, it goes back to, I can look at things all day long and I can be like, oh yeah, this is wrong or that's wrong. But are we taking ownership of it? Are we actually saying, okay, I'm aware of this. Wait, I can change it. I can make it better. I can make the decision to make life better. And that's the hardest part. It's the commitment to that. It's to say I was wrong. The story that, the old story was wrong. And now I'm going to do it better. But I understand the path is long. It's not and this is why I talk a lot about delayed gratification. It's been one of the key catalysts for my life of what the person I am today, going back. So let's circle all the back to how we started the conversation, right? Let's go back to the Dave Ramsey book, right? I was in a lot of debt. I became debt free in, I think, the end of 2016, right? And I've remained debt free, and I've improved my financial situation immensely. Growing up, though, I lived in a middle class. Like I wasn't poor, I wasn't wealthy. In a middle class family. I started working when I was like 11, though. I had a paper route and I had jobs all the way really from 11 and a half until now. And I say that to tell you that, like, yeah, I'm making money and I have things, but I didn't know how to manage money. I didn't know how to make it last. I didn't know how to build, investment, anything of that nature. So there's a different version. So have you ever seen did you read the book Dark Matter? Have you ever read that book?
No, I have not. Let
It's a
me write it down.
it's a cool book about like quantum and
Okay.
going into like different worlds and stuff. And now there's a show on, they remade it, a little different, but it's a show on Apple Plus. Anyways, I'm watching that now, so it's top of mind. The reason is like a different world. Like if a different Brian split off back in 2009 reading that book and decide not to do anything, who is he at today? Maybe he's in $100,000 of debt and working a dead end job and broke and all this stuff. I decided that I was going to keep living at the 30,000 ish, 40,000, 50,000, whatever, that type of range, even when I was making $100,000. And I had that delayed gratification that I wanted to get to a point of like where we're at today. I knew it was going to take a long time. I didn't know how long. I didn't know the struggle, but all I knew is, wait a minute, I lived poor for a lot of years. I lived on rice and beans. So why don't I just do that for a little longer? And now start putting money toward that, doing the debt snowball that Dave talks about and being able to build up investments. All that to say is I decided to make a commitment and take control of that financial situation and do something about it. It was it was a long struggle. I'm not saying it was easy, but it was like a long struggle. But I knew I had to do it if I wanted to get to a better state. So that's my encouragement to folks is like, wherever you're at today, just know that you can change it, but it might not change tomorrow and it might not change the next day. Just like working out, you may not lose 100 pounds tomorrow, but I'm pretty confident if you exercise every day and ate better for an entire year, you're going to lose a ton of weight. If your goal is 100, maybe it's not 100, but it might be 70 or 50, like there's a good chunk coming off, using that as the analogy. So commit to the change. To commit to the change, you actually have to put systems and processes in place versus just saying you're going to do it.
Yeah, I feel that most things in life are very simple, but the fact that are simple uh, don't make them easy. Honestly, as you said, it's just taking those radical, even no radical changes, but just changing that mindset, changing that mentality is hard. But it's when we commit to something, we feel, and I think that's why, as you mentioned earlier, like, well, only I was like, you're gonna be in the top 1% of the podcast if you do more than 21 episodes or something, right? But because we want that immediate validation, we want instant gratification. It's just hard. We are with technology, everything becomes a lot easier, and we are being crippled by it. And having that delayed gratification, like I don't have to have that today. I don't have tomorrow. And let's be honest, if you want to have like a great, be in great shape, or want to have a successful business or be debt free, it's gonna take probably quite a few years. It's not going to be right away. And we tend to go for the path of least resistance. Sadly, I think most folks do.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I've done that. You've probably done that. It's like, well, and what's the quick win? And this goes back to, again, what do you want versus, ooh, let me take that quick job. Or this happens, I see a lot in, people will leave a company to make $5,000 more in salary, which you break that down over a year is peanuts per paycheck after taxes. But they'll do that just to make 5,000 more, but they just left. Maybe, like, I'll give you an example, right? Someone working from remotely, and then they decide to take another job where they have to go in the office 3 days a week. Okay, you're making 5,000 more, but now you actually have to drive, and there's gas and there's other things. Maybe you have to eat lunch out. Like, all, you know what I'm saying? Like, all these additional problems that just you brought up just because you decide to make a decision to change that, because why? For a few extra dollars? Like, that's not a, now if the job wasn't good or wasn't, good for you in terms of where you want to go to career, sure, but just to run it after a few dollars. It's the same thing where people take on clients. I see this with my sales coaching. People take on clients that are like not good fits for them, but because they pay them some money. Okay, but those people actually become testimonials and referrals or references. And are they the best clients? Because if they're not the best clients, how are they going to talk about you with other people? Are they going to share those stories better? So again, it's making a longer term play and decision that's going to help you 5 years down the road, not 5 minutes down the road. Like, that's a tough decision to make. But again, it's knowing where you want to go. And I know it sounds like hokey pokey, like, yeah, know where you want to go and what you want, but most people are unwilling to sit down. I would encourage everyone, literally take a piece of paper with a pen, turn off your phone, go for 30 minutes, literally turn everything off. No podcast, don't even go for a walk. Literally sit and just sit there. Just think. Ask yourself the question, what do I really want? And just start jotting down some notes. You do that a few days in a row, it's amazing what you almost start having this like inner dialogue with like, yeah, I really want to do that, but is that because my mom keeps telling me? Do I really want to be an attorney? Well, my parents both were attorneys and they really are pressuring me, but you go through this, but most people are unwilling to sit and think. So that's my encouragement. You want to start, go give yourself some time to start. Give yourself some time to think and see what you want to do.
Man, again, very, 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 very simple. But yes, we do need that idle time. And we're so distracted. Everything is just, we're being bombarded with information, whether it's just from, we need to read a book, watch a YouTube video, scroll on social media. We're always distracted. If not, we're watching Netflix, we're doing things. And we need that free time just to just think. And not only think, but just be within ourselves and understand exactly what we want. But I don't know if it's laziness. I don't know if it's people have fears towards it, or I don't know if they're just plain uh, just boredom. Because at the beginning it's hard because you're sitting there, you're just like, okay, I'm not doing anything, I'm bored. Well, your brain kind of needs that. I mean, our brain wasn't designed to have, like a being bombarded with a lot of information and and stimulus. I guess it would be this. I guess that's why a lot of people burn out, one, and that's why a lot of people just haven't been able to find themselves because of that. So yes, that would be one of the simple things, but could have the biggest impact on somebody's lives. Just knowing exactly uh, what they want. And by the way, what you mentioned there is just very, very true. People would rather sacrifice some hidden metrics like, oh, I work remotely, but now I'm making an extra, say, 10,000 a year. So that could I could say that my salary is like, I'm not making 90,000, I'm making 100,000,
Right.
but now I have to commute like an hour.
Yeah.
So
Well,
is it
people
worth
quit
it?
jobs all the time for money. I know plenty of people that they leave, their whole families pick up and leave because they're making a little more money. It's like, okay, you're making a little more money. Maybe you got a promotion. But again, it goes back to what's that doing? It's getting you more toys. Again, cool. If that's you, go ahead and do it. But I would encourage most folks to really dig deep because a lot of times that's not making you happy. That's not really making you happy. It might give you some gratification today, but it's not making you happy because you're going to be, 6 months from now, you'll be looking for another job because this job sucks. And again, it goes back to like, there's no silver bullet to this. I do it like the whole reason the Just Get Started mission exists, going back to what I said with the podcast and the way it started, is like, I just want folks to maybe take a little less time than I did to get started. Like instead of taking 2 years to start a podcast, maybe they start it next week because it's like, yeah, what am I scared of? So that's the whole point. You're right. It's fear, it's uncertainty, it's doubting ourselves. It's having, again, friend groups that aren't good for us. There's a lot of things that get into play. So starting is not the easiest thing. I actually find that the more I've been doing this is starting is hard. I think the challenging part, and this is why there's a elephant graveyard of 3 podcasts, that people start, is I think once you hit the plateau of like, oh, this is cool, I'm starting, and then it's like, oh my God, it goes back to that commitment, right? And that's when people drop off. When they hit that plateau, they drop off. And so I think it's really valuable to think about the commitment. Like, okay, I want to do this. This is what I really want. All right, what am I going to do to commit to it? How am I going to change it goes back to, it's like, James Clear stuff with Atomic Habits. Like, go back to systems. What is his saying, right? You do not rise the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Like, what are your systems? Do you have good quality systems in place with your schedule, with what you're going to do, with how you're going to document stuff? Because if those are out of whack, you're not going to reach your goals. It's simple stuff. It just takes a long time. And that's why people get lucky. Sure, we've all got lucky in situations. I've been lucky a ton with getting in the right rooms or being with the right people or whatever, right? We all get lucky in times. I think we all do that if you're creating things. But it really comes down to consistency over time. Anyone that's done everything, go look at the biggest names in the world. They might be quote unquote talented, but it's really just been doing it for a long period of time. And they started to figure out what worked for them. What was their big thing? What were they selling? Like look at The Rock as a phenomenal example. Now he sells everything. He has all these different products. Like he was a wrestler, but he learned that, hey, he could be this personality. He had this brand. He had this thing. Okay. And then he became a movie star. Still the same Rock, right? It's still the same person. He just figured out what lane was best for him. But it was just over a long period of time that he came ultra pop. Now, some people, I'd say most people don't want to be that ultra famous anyways, right? I don't want cameras all around. I don't want that. But to be successful, first you have to define success, what that is for you. And then you have to work in the right direction over a long haul. It doesn't happen overnight. We've all heard that. But I don't know what the day is that it works. Simon Sinek, I love how he talks. Simon Sinek is. I love how he talks about like, I want to get in shape. Like I want to lose 20 pounds, but I don't know when the 20 pounds is going to come off. So I kind of have to just keep doing the thing. And I have to keep figuring it out and navigating along the way and tweaking here and there. But I have to just keep moving forward. I don't know when the 20 pounds, it might be in 20 days. It might be in 2 years, but I just have to keep moving forward. And that's the thing. You talk to anyone that's done anything of relevance where they're happy and fulfilled and successful, I promise you there is a long path of consistency. A long path of consistency. It might be 6 months, it might be 6 years, whatever, but it's a long path. It's not something they did for a week.
Yeah, even 6 months is just like pushing it. 6 months is probably pushing it. It's just it's the willingness of doing something for a ridiculous amount of time without seeing results, and then keep doing it. And I'll be honest with you, even and that's why to me now I'm not asking any kind of piece of advice to anybody about the podcast, because I knew last year when I decided to start this journey that it was going to be hard. I knew what my challenges were going to be. I knew what exactly the mental battles. I was well aware of all of those. 6 months in, I'm struggling. It's like, okay, I knew the hard times were going to come, right? And this is not about that my audience might not be growing at the pace I want. No, because I told myself I'm going to give myself 2 years at least, and then I'll reevaluate the whole thing. But the point of trying to get new guests or just emailing people, reaching out, and getting ghosted, all of that. But the fact that I enjoy so much and I feel energized every time I talk to a new guest, because I'm very excited to just get to learn and having conversations. That's what kept me going, and that's when I knew that I was on the right path. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, because even though I'm struggling for the first time in my life, I'm not quitting after a couple months. That
That's a
it
big
happened
change.
to me
Yeah.
many times. No, Brian, that is what you're saying is it's true, and once again, it's simple, and but it's it's hard things. It's just hard. You just have to have the consistency, and nobody's going to do that for you anyway.
Yep.
You have to put the
And that's
work.
why I firmly believe you have to learn to take control of your life. There are certain things you can't control in life, but the things you can control, the daily decisions, that's what you really have to be focused on. And the more decisions you make in a row that are right for the path that you want to be on, the better you're going to turn out. Or at least the opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's a better opportunity that turns out on a better path. So that's always my encouragement is take control of the decisions you can and not let the stuff you can't control, not let that bother you as much. Simple,
Yes.
but not easy right away. It's
Yeah.
something you got to learn.
And understand that you have control almost. I mean, the only thing that you can control is your what do you do and how you react to things. And we want to have control over everything, and then
That's right. And that doesn't
nothing can
exist.
happen.
So you only can control what you can control. And then you got the other stuff go by the wayside as best you can. Not stress about it. Surely we can think about it or whatever, but it's like, what am I worrying about? I don't have control over this. Like you could ask a guest all day to be on the podcast. They might not get back to you. They might say no. Okay, you can't control that, but you can control that you're asking. That's all you can do. We want to overcomplicate it. It's actually not that complicated. It just takes a long time and there's a lot of struggle and there's a lot of mental gymnastics that go on during the period of like starting and then getting to a spot where you feel like there's traction. This takes a long time.
It does, man. It does. Yeah, Brian, I've enjoyed the conversation a lot, and I know that we could go for even like
Yeah,
hours and
sure.
hours
Enjoyed
talking.
it. Thanks, Daniel.
But as a closing question, man, what lessons or what lesson have you learned from your lowest point, and is there anything that you're grateful for?
I mean, I'm grateful for every opportunity I have. I mean, I think that's why I've been able to get to a spot where I'm happy and fulfilled is I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful for my friends and family. I'm grateful for the opportunities, even the fact that for you to invite me on here and talk, like I'm grateful for that, right? I live as an optimist. I live that the world is a pretty good place. If you want to be here, you have a lot of opportunity, to do things. And for the longest time, I lived with a very negative mindset. I was the victim. I blamed other people. I pointed fingers. I was saying, oh, that's for someone else. That's not for me. And when I decided to take control and say, no, 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 I'm going to make the decision to do this. It might not work out. I might get laughed at, whatever. But this is something for me that I want to do. I live in that optimistic mindset that, hey, this is going to work out. This is something I want to do. It's been a complete game changer. So, yeah, I'm extremely grateful for that. I mean, when I look at low points, it just goes back to Did I make the right decision? By the way, we don't know the decision in the moment always. It's easy to look back now and be like, oh yeah, that worked out or that worked out. And by the way, there's times like I've been laid off from a job and then, I get hired at an unbelievable company where, the founders are still my mentors today. Like that was 10 years ago. Like that happens. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't put that wasn't in my, bingo card in 2014 that I was going to get laid off, but it's what happened. So I think the low points, it's really just how we deal with them. How do we deal with them? Again, in the past, it was I'd get frustrated, I'd blame everyone else. And now I look at if whatever a low point would be, and I say, what did I do to cause this? Is the worry enough? Like, is the worry even there? I have this in my journal that I don't even do every day anymore. I do it kind of sporadically now. But I have this one question: is what can you let go of today? Like, what's on my mind that I can let go of? And I think of like, Elsa and Frozen, the movie Frozen, right? Let it go. It's like, what can you let go of today? Like, what's on my mind that's really not that important that I can kind of brush aside? And that's how I think about the low points. There's going to be low points. There's going to be times that you struggle. There's going to be tragedy. But it goes back to what we've been talking about a little bit. It's like stoicism. I may not be able to control what happens, but I can control my reaction to it. And that's what I teach my son. So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know everything that's going to shake out in life. When those low points, when the tough times hit, I have to be aware that they're hitting. I have to be okay with feeling in the moment. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have those emotions. And then I have to decide to move forward in a positive direction. Again, going back to being, what am I grateful for? What do I have? And how do I be optimistic about the path ahead and not just live in the depressing moment that is today? And that's, I think, the most important. How do I get out of those moments quicker, where before I'd live in those moments for a long period of time?
That's a great answer, and it's food for thought, honestly, because we tend to be very, very negative. It's just like, I don't know if it's a survival instinct, who knows, but it's much easier to be negative than to look back and say, hey, let's give a point that you made before, just be kinder to ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
not judging ourselves and not putting ourselves down, and just, hey, if something happened, let's figure this out and be grateful for what you have. So I
Yep.
completely love your answer, and I think that if you can take only one thing, just think about those and start changing your mindset, uh,
Mm-hmm.
slowly, but eventually you'll get there. You just have to trust the process, even as
Just get started,
cliche.
right?
Yeah. Oh, just get started.
That's
Speaking
right.
of which, Brian, where can people find you? You have a great podcast, Just Get Started. You also have uh, two children's book now, a third one, My Best Friend Fred, that is coming out in October.
Yep.
Where can they find you?
Yeah, I think the best spot's my website, brianondrako.com, BrianOndrako.com. That's where everything kind of houses. And then I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, commenting. I'll post some stuff. I'd encourage folks, if they're thinking about, how do I change? How do I become better? I mean, I think the easiest spot on my website is subscribe to the blog. They're like micro blogs 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Just kind of my thoughts on the world. Again, how to think differently. That might be a good place for them to start if they're kind of looking to change their life.
Perfect. Yes, I'll add all of those on the video and the description. And Brian, once again, it was a completely pleasure, and I had a great time talking to you.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.